Welcome to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg,
I'm Emily.
and we're continuing in this video our series of the complete works of Stanley G. Weinbaum, very early science fiction author who died, I believe, in 1936 or 1937 after starting to write in 1934. So
Oh man, very
less than three
short.
years, he wrote this body of work which just blew everybody away.
Mm-hmm.
And this was before the Golden Age. He wrote everything he wrote before Campbell took over Astounding.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty remarkable stuff. This is the 14th work in Weinbaum's bibliography.
Okay.
And really it's only his like fourth or fifth science fiction story.
Okay.
And it was
The 1930s.
published in the 1930s. Come on, book. Here we are. It finally went there.
Yay.
Um, Problems with the internet in Two Rivers right now. It was
Great.
published in the February 1935 issue of Astounding Stories, that was called
Mm-hmm.
back then. Astounding Stories magazine. It's a novelette. It's part of a small series of three stories around a common character named Ham Hammond.
Ham Hammond.
What a name, huh?
Like Martin.
Yeah.
There's a movie called Extraordinary. It's an Irish film. One of the characters in it is named Martin. And I was like, very original.
Yeah, especially since it's from Looney Tunes, Martin the Martian.
Yeah, Martin the Martian. Yep.
Um, Story was published in Astounding Stories, which of course there are PDFs of that free on the internet if you want to do a search. I have it in its original book publication by Fantasy Press of A Martian Odyssey and others. It's also in the Best of Stanley G. Weinbaum, and if you love ebooks, there is a free ebook from Standard Ebooks, which is the complete fiction of Stanley Weinbaum, and it's
Nice.
free,
Free is my
completely
favorite
free.
price.
Standard Ebooks is really great. They have a team of it's like open source ebook,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much anybody can sign up and make ebooks for them.
That's cool.
And they get the texts off of Project Gutenberg and
Mm-hmm.
they build it, because Project Gutenberg sometimes the formatting is wanky.
Yeah.
Standard ebook takes it and cleans it. They clean it all up and put some nice artwork with it, and they put
Very
it out
nice.
there for free. And you can just download these things and read them. And there's so many great classics,
Mm-hmm.
not just of science fiction, but of literature that they have gone through, and they're constantly busy working on more.
Yeah,
It's a really great resource.
that's awesome.
So,
And it's my favorite
Parasite
prize.
Planet.
All right, Parasite Planet. So Ham Hammond is a what would you call him? He's kind of like an explorer, resource collector. Like, I don't know that he has really a title. I can't remember if the story gave him one. But so he's found
He
this
was he was kind of like in the
great.
1860s, the guys that went for the gold rush,
Yeah,
prospector.
like a prospector, a ranger kind of person.
He
Trading.
was called a
A,
poacher.
a trader, yeah, or a poacher, depending on who you are. Um, but he's going to find basically this artifact of some sort. I think it was a type of mineral that I can't even pronounce. There's like four X's in the name.
Yeah,
That's I don't know how to pronounce that. My dyslexia was just like, oh hell no. We're just gonna go. And he picked up the and he has it now. But it's basically gonna set him up for life.
yeah.
He's spent everything and risked everything to go find this material on Venus.
Hmm.
So he's on Venus and he's in the Hotlands, which is a strip of jungle that is on the just on the cusp of being on the hotter side or full sun side of Venus. And so he's trudging through it, and every plant and animal in this strip of land is a parasite of some kind.
Hmm.
They're just feeding off of each other all the time. There's a ton of mold because of the moisture and humidity, and it is extremely quick and aggressive mold. There's funguses. Everything is trying to eat you and kill you.
Hmm.
Um, so it's him trying to travel after a very sudden sinkhole quicksand situation happens and swallows his entire home.
Yeah,
that he set up.
it's like this area of Venus has these events where the ground just turns to mud all
Yeah.
of a sudden, and so everything sitting on top of it just sinks
Yeah.
and never can. Well, it could be dug out once the ground goes back to dirt again, but
Yeah, but that who knows how long that takes or if it's even worth it.
yeah.
Because the
And
ground is so
I think
unstable.
it's important to point out this isn't quite accurate, but only because of when Weinbaum wrote this story, he did his research.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, 1935, they thought Venus always kept the same side to the sun.
Yes.
So Venus rotated around its axis at the exact same speed that it orbited the sun, so
Mm-hmm.
that the same face always stayed to the sun. And that would be made possible by the sun's own gravity holding the planet that way.
Mm-hmm.
What we know today, though, Venus has a very aggressive atmosphere. The winds are beyond cyclonic.
Mm-hmm.
And the force of those winds actually counteracts the sun's gravity enough that Venus actually does turn a little bit.
That's interesting.
But they didn't know that when Weinbaum wrote this story.
Mm-hmm.
So in Weinbaum's story, you have one side of Venus that's just being roasted by the sun all the time. The other side of Venus isn't getting any light,
And it's
so
frigid and icy
nothing
cold.
can live there because it's so cold.
Yeah.
And you have this twilight area where people can actually
Yeah, it's habitable.
live.
Yeah. It's barely habitable, but it is
Right.
habitable.
Is habitable,
Yeah.
but what habits it wants to eat you.
Yes, because resources are so few and far between because of the extreme conditions.
Hmm.
So yeah, he's trudging through trying to get to the nearest American outpost, essentially.
Yes.
And this jungle is brutal. You get really great world building, lots of interesting creatures and plant life. And eventually he runs into another home of someone else. And
Hmm.
this one is actually remarkably luxurious.
Hmm.
Like this dome is 3 stories. It's definitely well insulated. Like it's a little over the top for the volatile ground
Hmm.
on Venus. So he tries to go in and it's locked, which is against planetary regulation, which is if you have a place where people can go and take off their visors and breathe that is not going to be infected by mold, you should let them do so.
Hmm.
So it's just like a common courtesy
Yeah,
law
and he's just looking for a place where he can stop, take off his mask, and
and eat
eat.
food without the mold taking it over and then taking
Yeah.
over him.
Hmm.
Um, So he sits outside and waits until a person comes along, and this person is very, like, aggressive. They just don't want him in there. They don't want to let him in. And eventually he just resorts to, I literally just want to get in and eat. I'm gonna point this gun at you. Please just let me in and eat. Like, I don't want to hurt you, but. So they kind of have a stalemate, and finally the person's like, fine, I'll let you in. Um, and he finds out it's a research facility, and he finds out that the person inside is actually the daughter of a famous British Venusian scientist of some kind or
Yeah, like
explorer.
like a botanist or
Yeah.
biologist.
Yeah, he goes through and he's the reason that people have so much knowledge about certain areas in the Twilight Zone
Hmm.
of Venus.
Hmm.
So he realizes it's his daughter, and as they're sitting there talking and discussing, what he's up to and she's up to and all this stuff, they get attacked by one of these big, doughy creature things that basically has an extreme acid on it that when it touches anything, it consumes it.
Hmm.
And it ruins the house, and they have to throw their super suits off real quick. And so basically everything's destroyed, and they decide they're going to travel together. Well, she wants to travel alone. He decides he's not letting her travel alone because
Yeah.
it's too high risk.
She wants to go to the British city. He wants to go to the American city.
And the American city is much
The
closer than
American
the British
city is
city.
to the
Like,
north, the British city is to the south.
so, but they do have to head in the same general direction,
Yeah, they do
and
have
then
to get to
split
these mountains to get out of
the hot zone.
the hot tropical area because the climate's going to change to where they wouldn't be able
Yeah.
to stay out.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to sustain life there very easily because it's gonna get even hotter soon. They're
Yeah.
basically trying to get out before summer.
Hmm.
So they're traveling together, and of course, they have some adventures and almost get killed by things, and the world building is phenomenal. And I'm just gonna kind of skim over that, but I mean, I really don't feel like I have to spoil the end either. Like, it's just a really fun adventure where these two people who are at odds with each other are working together to survive an environment.
Hmm.
And with really unique creatures and plant life and really unique landscapes, and, the natives are interesting. So there's just a lot of really interesting stuff. This
Yeah.
is a really fun, almost fantasy style science fiction,
Hmm.
which is phenomenal. I enjoyed it a lot.
It's a very cool story, and it should remind you of something that we read a couple of years ago. Death
Death
World.
World? Yeah, Death World.
I feel like Harry Harrison must have read this and then
Yeah,
come up with Death World
yeah,
to try and update the idea of this whole planet ecosystem that's bent on destroying you.
yeah. I love it. But yeah, and some of the like adaptability of some of these creatures and being like the story really isn't that much about the two people.
No, and
They're just like inconsequential. They're just the propellers of the story. The story is learning about these really
it's more
interesting
about, yeah,
creatures.
and I mean that's the way A Martian Odyssey was, that's
Yeah.
the way the one um on Titan
Yes.
was that we just read.
Yeah.
It's more about about building this environment and coming up with all these cool imaginative creatures to
Yeah.
populate the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
It Weinbaum had a great ability with that and took a lot of fun in
Mm-hmm.
just coming up with the wildest creatures you could
Yeah.
possibly imagine.
And they're so interesting. They're so I love that they aren't humanoid too,
Hmm.
because I always felt like that was a cop out, like making something so similar to humans.
Or
That
making
doesn't,
them lizards or making them
yeah, like human,
giant insects.
yeah, like something that we're used to seeing that
Yeah.
for some reason speak English, you know,
Yeah.
like that sort of thing.
Weinbaum actually, I think he understood biology a lot better.
Hmm.
I don't know if he did or not, but it's almost like he had studied like um, undersea life forms and life forms beyond just mammals and insects,
Hmm.
to come to an understanding of fungus and things like that and
Yeah.
how they fit into the ecosystem.
Yes.
And then he used that knowledge to come up with all these crazy creatures
Yeah, and they're
that
really
sound
interesting.
plausible.
Yes, and it's just this very vibrant, colorful world that he built on
Hmm.
Venus. And that really is the story. It is the
Yeah,
adventure of trying to survive. It's the adventure of all these creatures, not these two
it's a
people.
travelogue, really.
Yeah, really, it is. And I think that kind of makes it interesting
Hmm.
because you're not getting there's a social dynamic going on, but it's really subversive until the end. And it's, a he versus she situation where enemies to lovers essentially.
Yeah.
In this particular instance. But
Hmm.
the story is about this world, and it's just so beautiful and creative, and I can't get over how fun it was to read about it,
Hmm.
which has always been like I really always enjoyed that. My brothers and I were really into Star Wars, so we had all these books on the aliens and the spaceships and all of like this detail about the lore and world and the crafting that went into all of it and that kind of stuff, which I've always found more interesting
Yeah.
sometimes than the story itself. And that's kind of what this was for me. It was
Hmm.
building this lore and building this world and crafting this experience for people, and happening to have two humans in it that are propelling the storyline.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it for that. I wouldn't call it a top tale personally.
No, why not?
No. Um, I feel like because I know my enjoyment is very unique. Like I do tend to enjoy things that are very dry and textbook. I think this is almost too dry and textbook to be universally themed.
Okay.
But it is a really fun adventure that I would highly recommend for people who love great world building,
Hmm.
personally.
That was kind of my feeling too, is that reading this, the um the two main characters in Flight on Titan
Hmm.
were a lot more interesting than these two
Yes.
characters.
Yes.
And it's like, it was basically damsel in distress, and he's trying to rescue her, but she's being,
Gonna rescue
you know,
myself.
yeah,
Yeah, it was.
it's too standard
Yeah, and it
stock
felt a little.
characters.
I could see people seeing this as kind of misogynistic too. Like, yes, he was just trying to be kind and help someone survive because he thought it would be better for both of us.
Hmm.
But I could see people misinterpreting that and her
Yeah,
just being a stubborn, emotional woman, even though she was a woman of science.
yeah.
But I think,
But having read Flight on Titan, I know
yes,
Weinbaum wasn't like that.
yes. But I see people choosing this as a standalone, having that issue with it,
Yeah.
even though it's incorrect.
Hmm.
Um, I just, as much as I love world building, I think there has to be more to a story to make it more universal.
Hmm.
And, but I freaking love this world.
Hmm.
Like, if it was written more like C.S. Lewis's, um, what was,
Paralandra?
yeah,
Okay.
it was written more like that with a lot more social interaction with the creatures.
Hmm.
Not that they all had to be humanoid, but they had to be understood to some degree. If I saw more of that in it, and
Or
more,
more, or a creature on Venus more like Tweel on Mars.
yes, building this relationship with something so unlike you.
Hmm.
This was way they were just the reason they hated each other is because they were almost too similar.
Yeah.
They were just looking for opposite things.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I just felt like this was a trope that's just kind of overused now, so I'm burnt out on it too.
Okay.
Which I hate to do that to a work that was written before a lot of like stuff now, but
Yeah.
I can't let that go.
Yeah. You're experiencing this as a reader today.
Yes.
You can make certain concessions to the fact that it was written in 1935, but you can't read it like somebody in 1935 did.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yes. But I do have to say I appreciate a strong female character, even though she had her own troubles and trials and stuff. She wasn't stupid.
Yeah, but I didn't think, I mean, for who she was, she should have been able to solve her own problems a lot better.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think a lot of it was just being
And
headstrong and
so
blind.
I question, having read other works by Weinbaum, I question how much of the story was editorial interference.
That's a fair assessment. That is very fair to ask that question because he has done a lot better female characters like than her.
Probably an editor saying, "We want more of your cool,
Make it more drama.
cool,
Yeah.
aliens, but we want just a standard adventure
Yeah.
story like
Adventure
everybody
story with
else is
enemies
writing.
to lovers.
Gotta have a damsel in distress, and
Yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
a steel-jawed hero to rescue her, and
Mm-hmm.
and forcing Weinbaum to go down that path
Yeah.
instead of the kind of thing like he wrote in A Martian Odyssey or Flight on Titan.
Yeah, he did make her a little petty in this one, which is not
Hmm.
typical for him.
Hmm.
That's really, I think, her major flaw is she's petty,
Yeah,
even though she's a woman of science.
yeah.
Doesn't make sense to me.
Stock
Anyway,
character, like I say.
yeah. So, but yeah, it's great world building. I
Hmm.
like, I can't even do it justice. Like, I want to talk more about it, but I can't because it's something you do have to experience
Yeah.
with your own imagination. He
Hmm.
just does such an incredible job of describing each and every one of these beings and creatures, the different atmospheres that you get as you go from the hot lands to the cooler side to the mountains, the
Hmm.
different creatures you encounter there, the why you encounter those different creatures.
Hmm.
It's all so well explained and so well done. I
Hmm.
will never be able to do it justice.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly interesting and very cool.
Hmm.
But yeah, not top tail
So
material.
very good, but not quite.
Yeah, very good. Really fun adventure story. Like, yeah, I could hand this to a kid and have no problem having him read it. I could hand
Hmm.
this to an adult and have no problem having him read it.
Right.
Like, it feels very universal in that sense.
Yeah.
I think if you appreciate sci-fi and world building, this is a great story for you.
Hmm.
But yeah, didn't blow me away though
Right.
with its plot. So,
Okay. We're in agreement.
yeah. How rare. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
It's rare that we seriously disagree.
Yes,
I
that
think
is true.
Legends and Lattes is the first one that we had any significant split on.
Yeah. And even still, like, we kind of knew it was cozy. So we knew what we were in for when we got into it.
But because of the hype, I was expecting more.
Yeah, I
That,
get
and
that.
that's a problem with book marketing in general,
Mm-hmm.
that you get all this hype and you're expecting this greatest thing you've ever read, and then you read it and it's a good book, but
Yeah.
not what you were told to expect, you know?
Well, and that's kind of, I think that's a difference too. Like women, I have grown up around women who really enjoy cozy mysteries and cozy novels.
Hmm.
So when it said it was a cozy fantasy, I already had an expectation of what that was, and I appreciated that it was marketed that way because that gave me a realistic expectation of it. So I went into it and it was exactly what I was expecting,
Hmm.
and it was very soft and kind, and having read a lot of extreme things lately, that was refreshing for me, and I see people needing that even in a fantasy genre.
Okay.
That's almost how this feels. Even though there's a lot of violence because these plants are all trying to kill you, this almost feels like cozy science fiction to me. But it is because it's just telling you what's happening.
Yeah.
So, and it all works out in the end.
Hmm.
But it does kind of cut you off, so does it really work out in the end? Do they really make it? You never know.
No.
Nope. They both
Yeah,
died on that mountain.
they don't go all the way back to the city. Something could have gobbled them up
I
already.
know. They could have died on that mountain. They're
Uh,
dead. Deader than dead.
mhm.
But who knows? So, but yeah, great adventure if you're into an adventure story, especially a science fiction alien world one.
Yeah,
And that's all I got to say about that.
that's all I got. So, um, except, what is the next
The next
Weinbaum? Let's hope it does not hang up on me. Hey, it went back. The
one.
Lotus Eaters
Ooh.
is his 15th story.
Is it
That's
a short
coming up.
work?
It's short.
Okay.
He mostly wrote short works. He did
Yes.
write 3 novels, but they're way towards the end.
Okay.
Well, 4 novels, but
Yeah.
I've already covered the
You've
leading ones.
mentioned, I feel like you've mentioned the story to me a few times.
The Lotus Eaters?
Yeah.
Okay.
Either that or I'm remembering it from Greek myth, maybe.
I don't know.
Anyway, I'm excited to read it.
Hmm. That'll be
So,
the next Stanley G. Weinbaum that we
yeah.
cover. So, have you read Parasite Planet? Leave your comments in the comments section. I think we already spoiled it pretty well, so
Yeah.
don't worry about spoilers on this one. Um, and you know, like we say, there's not that much of a story beyond the aliens, so there's
Hmm.
not really anything to spoil here.
Yeah.
So leave us your comments what you thought of Parasite Planet or Stanley Weinbaum. And come on back for more Weinbaum and lots of other authors that we cover here on Telltale Books.
Yeah. So like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.